Hello and welcome to Reese Teaches Programming. Here in our latest video about DevOps and testing, I'm going to be talking about regression testing. And regression testing is a core part of maintaining quality in your evolving software. So if you've been keeping up with me so far, we've been talking about lots of different types of testing and how they fit in our DevOps pipeline. And I know there's so many, right? And we're almost there. If you're here with me on regression testing, we only have a couple more to go. So with regression testing, the idea is simple. Every time you make a change, whether it's a new feature, a bug fix, or a configuration update, you want to be sure you didn't break anything that already worked, right? Because there's nothing more frustrating as a software developer at basically chasing your own tail. As you think you're making progress, you realize you've broken something that you already tested. So regression testing helps us make these changes with confidence and actually make forward progress. So regression testing often means that we have this automated test that runs alongside our functional tests. And we automate this like everything else we've been talking about so far in our CI/CD pipelines to make sure, again, that we didn't break anything that already worked. So what is regression testing? And we'll talk about why it matters. So we want to retest previously working features to ensure they still behave correctly after making changes. And this might mean that you have a new feature, you have a bug fix, you have a dependency update, or you're even just refactoring code. You have to ask yourself, we fixed the login bug. Did we accidentally break the sign-up flow? And that is the heart of regression testing, verifying that progress doesn't come at the cost of stability. So of course, like with all the tests that we've talked about, we want to know, why does it matter? And there are 4 big reasons why regression testing is so important. So first of all, it helps us catch bugs that obviously weren't intended. I know that's funny to talk about bugs maybe that were intended, but it helps us catch bugs, right? Issues caused by side effects in the code that maybe we've introduced in something that was working just fine previously. It helps us build trust. We can release faster when we know our old features are safe from new progress. It protects critical workflows like logins and checkouts and data syncs, and it is a key part of what we consider our long-term maintenance plan. So as your app grows and becomes more complex, we know we're not going back over something that was working fine for several releases, but suddenly a new bug has appeared because of a new feature that we've introduced. So what triggers regression testing, right? So when do we run these? Anytime we have a change, right? A feature update, a bug fix, code refactoring, in your CI/CD pipeline run, anytime the code is changed, a regression test should be triggered and should be run. So what do we include? In our regression suite, we want our critical user flows. Just like in the previous tests that we've talked about, these are the areas that every user touches and so are crucial to make sure are working correctly. Logins, signups, checkouts, anything like that. Previously fixed bugs. So these are known failure points that maybe you've introduced again. So in our regression test, anything we previously fixed and we know is a failure point should be in the regression test. Edge cases. Edge cases are those weird, tricky inputs that might break things, or those things that you say, well, most users are never going to do that. You want to test that. Third-party integrations. So anything external that's basically out of your control if it's broken, but you want to know if it's not accessible or you're not getting the right responses. And high impact or anything that you would consider business critical functionality should be in your regression test to make sure that after you deploy, you haven't broken everything. And so the goal is to cover the parts of your application that matter the most, right? So how do we do it? And we can kind of approach this two different ways. Manually, we can use checklists or exploratory sessions. And this works really well if you have UI-heavy apps or if you're just doing a one-off check. Or you can do these automated. And that's ideal if you're running a DevOps pipeline because automation allows you to run tests quickly and frequently without manual effort. It also means that your software developers cannot skip doing regression testing. You know my thoughts. If you've listened to my videos, I love you developers. I call myself one of you. But if you have software developers running tests manually, they're going to skip them. So don't give your developers an opportunity to introduce bugs into the code and out into the wild when a simple automated regression test in your pipeline would fix all of that. And then tools. We're always talking about tools. Some of these we've heard before, right? Cypress, Playwright, and Selenium are great for UI testing. Postman, Newman, Rest Assured for APIs. For C#, we have things like .NET Test with either InUnit or XUnit. In JavaScript, we have Jest or Mocha. Really, it comes down to like, what's your stack? What tools do you want to use? What are you familiar with so that your testing can be set up correctly? So, I like to show you examples. Here is an example of C# using InUnit. And we've built this test to ensure that updating a user's profile doesn't interfere with their ability to log in again. So this is a classic regression scenario. We want to verify that a fix in one part of the system didn't break another. So as we go through there, we can see it's logging in. We're checking that user ID. We're asserting that they were able to log in correctly. And then if they actually go back and log in again, they get that is authenticated result back. So we're not breaking like the cookie or the token or anything in that scenario. So in our DevOps pipeline, regression testing fits in a nice little place. So after a code push, you can have it run alongside your unit tests. So since our unit tests are those little pieces that are just testing one little something, like one little method, a regression test can also be testing one little something. And so it goes in there right alongside your unit tests. However, if you're running your pipeline in a staging environment and you're running you can run like a full regression suite and go through lots of different pieces of functionality, those core workflows, those critical paths, and really, catch everything in staging. So it kind of depends on your environment, but some teams can schedule daily or weekly runs of their regression suite just to catch sneaky bugs. Of course, automation is going to make all of this possible and help it run really smoothly without slowing down your release cycle, because if every time you're in that pipeline, it's running these tests and you can see if there's something broken, then that makes that fix, the catch of it easy, and then, hopefully deploying a fix. So some best practices, right? So here are some tips for keeping our regression tests effective. We want to automate as much as possible because we don't want to rely only on humans. Love you, humans. Don't want to rely only on humans. Keep your test suite clean. And what I mean by that, like updated and clean, is remove outdated or irrelevant tests. Keep your tests updated. Keep your tests written nice and clean so that they're easy to maintain and they're all in one easy to get to logical place and organized. Tag critical tests. So if you have smoke or login flows, tag those so they get run more frequently because those are your high priority tests that are going to catch like the really critical bugs. Version control your test code, just like you would your application code. As your code base changes, your tests are going to change. Keeping up with those tests can feel like a lot of maintenance, and version controlling those can take away some of the headache as they change. And then use selective test runs. So for fast feedback, we sometimes just want to run selective tests for speed, but then run the full suite, right? All of your tests in staging so that you can just check like, hey, these are just the pieces I touched. So like, this is just what I think I need to test. But then if you're wrong, you're going to catch it when the full suite runs. So following these best practices can make your regression suite both powerful and manageable, because this does start to feel like a lot of work. Now, some common pitfalls. We don't want to let our regression suite grow unchecked. Too many tests slow down your pipeline, frustrates your development team, causes problems. You got to have someone kind of grooming that to make sure that tests are being updated and only the relevant things are in there. We don't want our old tests hanging out in there, which can lead to false failures and wasted debugging time. And then we certainly don't want to rely only on manual testing. That slows your release process down and increases risk because we're relying on humans. And then if people are skipping tests, you won't know until all of a sudden you just have like a lot of user reports or your logs are lighting up because your app isn't working. So in closing, I know we're learning so much about all of these different tests. It can be really hard to store all of this in our brains. As we wrap up our section on testing, and because we're almost through all of the different types of tests that we want to talk about here in our DevOps and QA course, we're going to start getting into, setting up these different types of tests, setting up our pipelines, looking at how these things run, so that you can kind of get your hands dirty with the different types of tests. And sometimes that helps, if you are building later a regression test and you want to come back to this lesson to say, like, refresh me on everything about regression tests, that's kind of why they're here, right? I don't necessarily think that you're going to store all of this information in your brain for later, but if you're really new to testing, this can be a lot of new information and kind of feel a little overwhelming. So take it one little piece at a time. And as we wrap up this video, here's a little summary about regression testing to help you. So regression testing helps us move fast without breaking things. I know that's always the phrase, right? Move fast and break things? No, move fast without breaking things. It catches bugs caused by changes, and it gives your team confidence, and it keeps critical systems running smoothly. We know we're making forward progress because we're not breaking things behind us. And then in a DevOps world, it's not optional, it's essential. So if you do have questions, make sure to throw those in the comments. Thank you so much for following along with me and listening. We'll be heading into our next lesson soon. And so thanks so much. Catch you next time.